Just because it's been on Ninja's head doesn't mean it needs to be on yours. Out of nowhere, it feels like in the last couple of years, gamers all over the world started buying the Beyerdynamic DT990 Pro, a headphone that is notoriously bad in the audio community. Now, there are some people this headphone could be right for, say if you have a bit of a notch cut out of your hearing and have some hearing loss. And no, that's not a joke. It actually is good for those people, if they can get over its other faults. I'm gonna give you a list of recommendations of headphones you should buy instead of the DT990 Pro. Whether you're a gamer or someone who wants to listen to music, we've got you covered here in this list. But first, let's talk about why you shouldn't get the DT990 Pro. And the first reason being what I just mentioned. It actually has huge spikes in the treble, the regions where you hear those high frequency sounds. Well, this essentially gets up into that range and then goes off into space. This makes the headphones sound harsh, it makes it sound sibilant, it makes it sound sharp, but in a bad way. But it's not just boosted in this range, it's also in the muddy regions of the bass. You might think, well, hey, a little extra bass, I like that. Yeah, you might, but not like this. I can't tell you how many people I know who have bought a DT990 and absolutely hated it, or people who have bought a DT990, used it for a while, then upgraded to something else and been like, man, I never knew how bad the DT990 was until I got something better. Which, hey, if you have a DT990 and you love it and you're watching this video, keep loving it. Don't listen to me, just enjoy what you're gonna enjoy. But for everybody else, don't buy that headphone. There's two categories I'm gonna break this up into and one little X factor, and that is gaming, listening to music, and does it need an amplifier? A lot of headphones need an amplifier to power them. That little jack on the front of your computer case doesn't always do it. And if they need more power, well, they need more power. That's how they're gonna sound their best. You might get volume out of them through a regular headphone jack, but they're not gonna sound right until you give them the juice they need. So with that said, let's get through this list. The first few items on it are cheaper than the DT990 Pro. The middle one is the same price, and the last two cost a little bit more, but are really worth the extra. And the first thing on the list is the HE400 SE. This is a planar headphone from Hyphaman. It has lots of detail for its price, decent soundstage, with the exception of kind of weird imaging. What does all of that mean? Well, it means that this one is a little bit more aimed at people who like to listen to music. So you're gonna hear a lot of detail in the music you listen to. The soundstage means it's going to sound nice and big. The imaging, the direction where things come from, that's a little bit more of a blurred line, though still comparable to things like the DT990. It does require an amp, but given how cheap it is, it's easy to get this headphone and an amp. Okay, that was the cheapest one on the list. Let's get up to some of the stars here. Next one up is the PC38X. This does not take an amplifier to power, and actually it's a straight up gaming headset. But if you listen to music, don't completely discount it. This has a very neutral frequency response with a little bit of extra sub bass, but in a way that's clean, tight, and enjoyable. It extends deep, it extends high, but the sound is still balanced overall. And what this headphone does really well is directional imaging. You can tell exactly where a sound is coming from down to the pinpoint. I would play Warzone with friends and I'd know, hey, you heard where that was coming from, you have to be using the PC38X, and they would go, yep. It's just that good for gaming. Now granted, this is a gaming headset like I said, so it has a flip down microphone that mutes when you flip it up, and a volume control on the other side. The areas where this could do better is detail. Some of our over-ear wired headphones in this list that aren't gaming headsets do have more detail than the PC38X, but if gaming is your main priority, the PC38X is absolutely the way to go. And I should note that detail really more affects music performance than it does gaming performance, and I would still strongly recommend this over the DT990. I would recommend my left shoe over the DT990. Strong feelings. The next one on the list is the Tiger 300R. It's actually made by the same people who make the DT990, only it's actually intended for gamers. It doesn't need an amplifier, and it sounds pretty good for music too. Tuning wise, it leans in the direction of the DT990, but it's just not as harsh. The treble spikes are nowhere near as big, and the bass, while it does still get a bit boomy, is tolerable. One thing this headphone does exceptionally well is directional imaging. You can hear exactly where sounds are coming from, but it has a bit more detail than things like the PC38X. So if you really already have a desktop microphone and don't want a gaming headset, well, there you go, Tiger 300R gaming headphones that also double as being pretty good for music. But if you want something that really excels at everything, well, that's the next one up on our list, which is a little bit more expensive than the DT990 Pro, but man, it pushes into another league. And that is the Sennheiser HD 560S. Several reviewers have noted this thing as the most well-balanced headphone at any price point when we're talking about frequency response. And yeah, it measures really, really good. It's one of those headphones that is flat as a board, but still has deep bass and is very enjoyable. It's high enough impedance and high enough resistance, you probably should use it with an amplifier. You can get by without one, but quality really matters here, and an amplifier does give it that extra bit of juice that it needs to just really sound right. The soundstage is nice and big on the 560S, so you get a pretty expansive sound of what's going on around you, and the directional imaging is just as good as things like the PC38X. So what we end up with is something that is fantastic for music and equally fantastic for gaming. It's lightweight, it's easy to wear it all day, and it's the same chassis design as we used to see on famous headphones like the DT990, which is a headphone people used for years and years and years for its comfort, but now, well, the sound is really good too in this model. That is pretty much my top pick on this list for if you do both gaming and listen to music. But I do have one more at the same price point for people who really listen to music more than they play games, and that is the famous HD6XX, a headphone you can buy and use it for like 10 years straight and love it every day. Now, the 6XX is a bit more mid-forward in sound, it's easier to turn up to higher volumes, and it doesn't image quite as well as the other headphones on our list, but what it does do really well is detail, and it's just an easy headphone to use day to day. A lot of that detail is in the mid-range, and this headphone responds strongly to things like tube amplifiers, giving people an extremely enjoyable sound. I've had a 6XX for I can't even tell you how long. But if I'm playing games, I would probably use the 560S instead. Now do me a favor, gamers have been through a lot over the last few years, especially with the prices of graphics cards. They deserve good audio. So if you know someone who plays PC games or just has built themselves a custom PC, send them this video. They deserve good sound. We deserve to save them from things like the DT990. Short and sweet. I don't want to waste you guys' time. That's going to wrap up this video. If you liked it, please leave a like down below, a comment letting me know what you want to see in the future. If you want to get active in the community, you can at the forums linked in the video description. And as always, don't forget to stick around, subscribe for more videos like this. Until next one, guys. Peace.